Hare Krishna. We'll continue our discussion this morning, and the topic today is then the second part, where we're discussing faith in the context of community. Because we all need others. We're all dependent on relationships with others. Sometimes I say that we are never entities within ourselves. We're always in relation to a place, in relation to people, in relation to external circumstances. And we are different in different situations, different with different people. It brings out another part of ourselves. There may be something in our character that's there, but actually we're never just an entity in itself. We're always an entity in relationship with. And ultimately, that relationship is the relationship with Krishna. Because whatever is manifest is Krishna. And of course, Krishna's energies. So we may be dealing with Krishna's energies, or we may be dealing with Krishna directly, seeing Krishna behind his energies. For example, we are chanting Gayatri Mantra, and when we chant Gayatri Mantra, the first Gayatri, the Brahma Gayatri, is basically aimed to reconnect us with Krishna, to once again see that Krishna is behind everything. And that's the beginning of the meditation. 3 times a day one meditates on how Krishna is behind everything. And there's some other mantras also. So that is interesting because it is all a matter of perspective. We can stand on the ground and see only the ground. We can look up a little more and we can see the sky as well. We can look and then we see the clouds, we can see beyond the clouds, and we can still see beyond that. And ultimately, if we are looking far enough, we'll see in the bigger picture how everything is related to the Supreme Lord. We'll see the universes appearing from the poreholes of Mahavishnu. We'll see how within each universe Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters. We'll see how a lotus flower is growing from his navel. We'll see how Lord Brahma is seated on there and places all the planets in their different positions and creates all the conditions for the living beings to reside within the universe. We can see all that at a glance in a bigger picture. And we can go still bigger. We can see how Mahavishnu is an expansion of Krishna, ultimately. And we can see how beyond the abode of Mahavishnu, there are the Vaikuntha regions, the Brahma Jyoti, within it, Vaikuntha planets, where the Lord resides with his eternal devotees. And we can see that these devotees in Vaikuntha have mystic powers, and that they can take many forms at the same time, and that they are having originally the same four-armed form as Lord Narayan, but then they take other forms as well, and they may take the form of sages, they may take the form of birds, they may take any form they like. In this way, we can get a glimpse of the Vaikuntha regions. And when our vision still expands greater, we can go beyond Vaikuntha and we can see that beyond Vaikuntha there is still greater opulence, namely in Ayodhya Dham. And we can see how there the Lord resides in his form of Lord Ramachandra with his devotees eternally. Hanuman is there. And we can still see beyond that and come to the outskirts of Dwarka, and we can and see Mathura, and we can still see beyond that and go to Golok Vrindavan, and we can see that one half of that Golok Vrindavan is Navadvip and the other half is Gokul. All right, the bigger picture, so to speak. So it is just a matter of expanding one's vision, and reality changes, isn't it? The smaller we think, the smaller our reality. I experienced it here in Australia because in the 80s I lived here for a while, and at one point they sent me to a farm which was way out there, near Mildura somewhere, which is already far, and then from Mildura to Wentworth, which is very small, 100 houses, and then 80 kilometers over a dirt track, right? The good old red dirt, which with rain turns to red mud, by the way, and when there's red mud, you can't get out, not even with a four-wheel drive, and there you are, on this farm, 80 kilometers from, you know, the world, right? And that's not much world. And then you're there with a handful of devotees. And we were there with a handful of devotees. And gradually, our consciousness changed. Where previously there were differences between countries, between nations, and we were following the news. Now, there was no more news. Now the only news was that this devotee living behind the third tree had a disagreement with a devotee who lived behind the fourth tree, and you know, and that was like world news. That was headlines, you know. I mean, it was really happening, and it was very interesting how quickly we went into village consciousness, and because when there's no news, no world news, well, then there's local news, you know. But news gotta be there, right? It's like that. Everyone knows that in the traditional village where the ladies are going with pots of water, or with pots to get water, that the well is not only the source of water. Everyone knows. It's like that, you know. We need news, right? We need news. We need social life. So community is essential to living beings, and human life means we need to express our natures. So that also brings culture. Culture sometimes is defined as expressing ourselves within certain safe boundaries. So if we could create such a community where there is space for human need, that would be that is required. Otherwise, you cannot make Krishna consciousness something that is only based on a conviction. Hare and Krishna. Or make it so narrow that there is no more space for human nature. Then it's not sustainable. How can we live like that for a long time? Not very long. So we can have a very high philosophy, but unless we fill it in with a culture and a way of life, sooner or later we're going to fall from that high philosophy. So it is. So culture is providing a basis for Krishna consciousness, and therefore we need community life where there is Krishna conscious culture, and we also need to develop that. In India, there is so much that got mixed into the spiritual culture, that things are no longer clear. It's no longer clear what is the goal, what is supposed to be done, what is not supposed to be done. For example, there's a story about a marriage, and a mother was arranging marriage for her daughter, and she was, everything was, had to be just right. It was quite a complicated thing, the whole ritual, everything was set up. And then, just as everything was arranged and everything was ready to go, suddenly in the middle of it all, a black cat. Oh my God. A black cat. No, I mean, yes, a black cat. So she said, what to do? There's a black cat. Inauspicious. We have to do something. So there was an empty basket from the flowers. Right? She just took the basket, put it on top of the cat. And the cat was out of the way. Anyway, everything went fine. The whole ceremony, everything worked, everything clicked. It was a great marriage, and so on, and everything perfect. 30 years later, her daughter now was arranging the marriage of her own daughter. And now it was her turn to make all the arrangements for the marriage. So she did everything as she learned it, she set it all up, and it was all there, and everything was complete. And she was going over the checklist to see if everything was there. I said, oh my God, we forgot one thing. What is that? I said, we need a black cat. Yes, we need a black cat, you know what I mean? And then it's like, yeah, but black cat, yes, we need it. The cat has to be under the basket, it has to be there. Otherwise it's not complete, you know? And then, so looking everywhere, finally found the cat, put it under the basket. And up to the day of today, in marriages, there is a black cat under the basket. Just in case you didn't know. So, this shows how, what tradition does. Right? That tradition has a good side. It maintains culture, but tradition also adds things, right? And eventually it grows on its own, and in the end nobody knows anymore what is actually the standard and what is not, and what is added and so on. Black cats. Well, so that element is there. So we need to create now a Vaishnava culture. It is a new culture. A new culture. For others also, coming from other backgrounds, the same thing. It's a cultural change. So coming to the process of bhakti, certain elements of Vedic culture have their room and space, but it has to be very centered around Krishna. I see like a lot of Bharatanatyam, because that has really become part of our culture. But then when I see the Bharatanatyam, sometimes I see a lot of demigod worship in the Bharatanatyam. And I think, wait a minute, you know. And they learned it nicely from India, imitated it nicely, but ho, that's not our business. No, we want only Bharatanatyam dedicated to Vishnu or Krishna. That is our worship. So we have to make sure that we have a culture which is favorable for cultivation, because that is the other aspect of culture. I'll write it down. Two definitions of culture. Culture, and then one is expression within safe boundaries. I'm of course speaking in culture in terms of our culture, of what we do in culture. You know, people also eat frogs in the name of culture, and that of course is not culture at all, so I'm not even addressing that. And the second part of culture is about cultivation. So that is our community life has to be based on culture, so that there is space for human expression, but it cannot be uncontrolled. Therefore, there are certain elements of Vedic culture. It's when you come for the first time to the Hare Krishna movement, suddenly it's the man on one side and the ladies on the other side. You see some lady taken away and she's looking at her, I don't know, husband or friend, like, help, you know, where are they taking me? And he's also looking, help. And that is difficult for people. Also in India, people are like, whoa. They're not used to this anymore. So in that way, there's a culture. Now we're so used to it. So many things are there which are creating space for human expression within safe boundaries, and at the same time are designed for cultivating pure devotional service. Because whatever we do, we want to stimulate each other in spiritual progress. We're not just a club. Welcome to the Hare Krishna Club, and I hope you really enjoy the cheese sabjis and the puris, right? Welcome, welcome. And I hope you have a great time on the Sunday feast and all the cultural programs. I hope you're really happy to be a member of the club. I mean, it's not a club. It's not about that. It is about much more. Just there on the screen, I have a little model of ISKCON in 3 layers. I slapped it together real quick this morning, so no time for any fancy graphics. Just well, the kirtan was going on, I was typing away. So ISKCON in 3 layers. On the top, on the surface of ISKCON, that what you see first is just on the outside, is the external organization. It organizes festivals, it maintains temples, it has retreats, it has a website, right, Krishna.com, and you can go on there, and it has many other sites, and it has, you know, it has personalities, and it has gossip, and so on. It has sort of many aspects to it. And a lot of people are thinking, that's it. I kind of have joined this society, I like it, I feel at home. I mean, I like these people, this is sort of a homecoming. No. It's not a homecoming, excuse me. The organization is a railway station. That's what it is. It's a railway station where you board the train to the spiritual world. It's not home. ISKCON's not our home, or this movement is not our home. It's simply a vehicle. And like any other railway station, it has nice aspects to it and some that are not so nice. That's how it is. And one has to just take it as it is and not make too much of it. Because if you're in a railway station, you can complain about the railway station. Well, you know, the railway stations are not what they used to be, for example, right? Or you can say, well, I don't like the station master very much. It's a good railway station, but the station master is a bit too much. One can, in discussing railway stations, we can find many things, right? One can say, I wish it was a cleaner railway station. You know, some railway stations are cleaner than others, and so on. Okay, whatever may be, but we are not there for the railway station. Yeah? We're there to catch the train, to go to another destination. So whatever the condition of the station is, like sometimes we're in Howrah station, it's a dump. There's no other word for it. Excuse me. It's it's a total dump, I tell you. And watch your bag and your pockets and everything else, right? Because, before you name it, some guy puts his sticky fingers in there. It's Hare Station, right? And, watch out. Don't sit down. Don't lean against any post. You may get head lice or anything, right? Anything is possible in Hare Station. Because it's a dump. Anyway, such is life. What to do? But we don't care. I've gone through there hundreds of times catching trains, catching different trains. So if we look at ISKCON like that, like a railway station, it looks a lot different as a place where we are getting ready to go to our destination. So then we understand it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if things are nice or if things are not always nice. It doesn't matter because it's still the place where you board the train. And that is important to understand. All right, so we see at the top, we see the goal of spiritual life. Krishna praying, love of God. This is the realm of the topmost devotee. That topmost devotee is Uttama. He is beyond tamas. Material energy is always tamas, is always considered to be ignorance. Even if one is in the mode of goodness, one is still covered by ignorance in the material world. To a lesser degree. Only one who is fully realized on the transcendental plane is beyond tamas, beyond the mode of ignorance, or beyond the influence of forgetfulness or nescience. Such a person who is deep in his bhakti gets a certain adhikar, a certain authorization. And according to his authorization, he gets a particular perception of reality. He is allowed entrance to deeper levels. And therefore, the focus of the Uttama Adhikari, and you can see there are Uttama Adhikaris on different levels. Some are in brain, some are less advanced, but still very advanced in bhav. Some are less advanced, but still very advanced in deep attachment to Krishna, but not seeing him face to face. And some are less advanced, but still very advanced because they operate on higher taste in devotional service. And they are all living, they're focused on prayojan, which is the ultimate goal, Krishna and his eternal associates in the spiritual world. And such devotees are always living in that spiritual world. Okay, now we're looking at the three layers. We see that a neophyte, or someone who's not very deep spiritually, is mainly concerned with the external organization and relates to that. And then there's a process, the chanting of Hare Krishna and other aspects of bhakti, and all right, they can do that, but not very long. Just if we sit down and a newcomer has to chant japa, how long can they chant? Not very long, mostly. So not so deeply absorbed in the spiritual process. Therefore, when a neophyte, or one whose faith is not so deep, goes into the perfect process, they can't stay there very long, and they bounce back up into the external organization. And therefore, again and again, they are preoccupying themselves mostly with the external organization. Okay, so the neophyte devotee is the Kanista Adhikari. We see that at the bottom in the second column. The Kanista Adhikari. Kanista means weak faith. Due to weak faith, the Kanista Adhikari is not having much adhikar, not much authorization to penetrate in spiritual substance. And therefore, the Kanista is looking at spiritual substance only from the outside. It is quite theoretical, it is difficult to penetrate. Krishna seems to be far away, and the process seems to be a shoe that is too tight, and you know, and the process just seems to be something that is not natural, and that is just far away from reality, and something you wish it would be possible, but it doesn't really look realistic. That is all the perception of the Kanista Adhikari. The Kanista Adhikari is that man who works on the roof and slides down and hangs on the roof, and who is saying to Krishna, "Can you catch me first?" Who doesn't have the faith to let go. So, in other words, who holds on to his material securities. Yes, I'm not. What if I give up all my material things and I don't get the spiritual realization? Then I have nothing. That is too risky. So you see the point? That is risky. Then I have nothing. Then I'm in between. So this is going on. Therefore, the Kanista is a hesitant person who is he is bahusakhi anantascha. His consciousness is many-branched because he is looking at many interests at the same time. Of course, I'm looking at Krishna, but I'm also making sure that, you know, the bank balance is safe, and I'm making sure that all the other interests are covered. Therefore, my eyes are constantly around, and yeah, Hare Krishna, but at the same time, I got a million things on my mind, and Hare Krishna, things to do. You can't focus. So this organization, this movement, or the organization is built on the transcendental movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself. Therefore, this movement is actually steered by Krishna. It's all going on by his arrangement. Lord Chaitanya is spreading Krishna consciousness to every town and village in the world. We're not doing it. It is going on by his will, and he's doing it through us, and he allows different devotees to do it and to take the credit. But actually he is flooding the whole world through different people. And wherever he finds someone who has a little bit of qualification, a little bit of desire, boom, mercy. And suddenly a devotee comes in your life. Somehow or other, Krishna comes into our life, mercy. And my story is that I didn't want Krishna consciousness because I thought these Hare Krishnas looked too extreme. So I kept a distance from them, and even, but then I met this girl who had a dog named Krishna. And then through this, somehow or other, why? Because someone, when she got the dog and she asked how to call the dog, then someone had read a book, one of her friends had read a book of Krishnamurti. He said, "Why don't you call the dog Krishnamurti?" She said, "No, that's too long. I'll just call him Krishna." And so that's how the dog became Krishna. And that dog came in my life. And then, so that was mercy, because suddenly the holy name was in my life. And again, mercy came in my life. When I was in the temple for a little while, I found it a bit too intense, so one day I escaped from the temple, And then I went to the movies, and when I went to the movies, while all the devotees were Govinda, Adipurusham, I went out the back door. And so they never saw me leave. And anyway, I went to the movies, and the first movie I went, suddenly in the middle of the movie, there is this scene where there are devotees coming down the street. I'm looking, my God, you know, devotees in the movie. And they came closer, but the tilak was wrong. There was no leaf, or no tulsi leaf on the nose. So what's wrong? These are not real devotees, these are imitations. And then the next moment they went into a bar. They sat down at the bar, some girls sat on their lap, they ordered some beer, and then a voice said, "It's good to have a drink after a hard day's work." And I thought, this is too much. And I was very angry. But at the same time, these imitation devotees had brought me back to Krishna consciousness, even when I tried to be in Maya. Yeah. So what to do? Krishna's mercy. I could realize, oh my God, I try to be a little bit in Maya, and Krishna is still there. He's with me all along. Like that. So spiritual life is about a reciprocation. It is about us trying to go deeper in spiritual life, but it is also about Krishna reaching up to us. At the deepest level of this movement, there's the Supreme Lord who is somehow or other spreading this movement, and therefore divine intervention is the deepest layer. Now, back to this little chart. We see here the realm of the Kanista Adhikari, the one with weak faith. Kamalasrada, he has weak faith. Therefore his adhikar is not very deep because he's not very fixed. We see in the left column, Srada, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana, Kriya, Anartha Nivriti. Srada means here it means the initial faith. The little bit of faith where you say, all right, I think that there is something to it. Let me investigate it deeper. Or maybe it matures even a little bit to the point where we say, yes, I think it's true. And then Sadhu Sangha, the association of devotees, and in the association of devotees, naturally, Krishna comes to the foreground. Naturally, suddenly Krishna is much more present in our life than he ever was. So the Sambandha means the relationship or the connection. The connection with Krishna begins to happen. And in Sadhu Sangha, more and more we begin to develop a connection with Krishna. Then comes Bhajana Kriya. In the association of devotees, we begin to take up the regular practice of devotional service. We begin to follow regulative principles, we begin to follow all kinds of spiritual things. Chanting, rising early in the morning, and so on. Little by little, we become more and more familiar with the whole process until Bhajana Kriya, it is said, until we take initiation, or initiations, then our spiritual practice becomes more and more solidified. And at that stage, Anartha Nivriti, or the removal of stumbling blocks within the heart, is beginning to happen. So these things are one who is in the beginning stages has to connect with. And until these things are solidly established, the connection with Krishna and the process is not really strong. And therefore the focus remains Sambandha. Some spend a whole life and they never really make a strong connection. They are like a loose wire. Somehow or other, the connection is just not strong. They just can't get serious about taking shelter of the process. And thus, they stay there. And their whole spiritual life is a struggle to make a connection with the process. And they never get beyond it. And at one point, they feel defeated. They feel, I can't do it. And they just lose courage. And then spend their whole life just, remaining in that platform. One has to go further. One has to have great faith. And just faith that whatever Krishna says is true. And one has to have faith that if I simply readjust my life according to the will of Krishna, as he reveals it in the scripture or through his devotees and so on, if I do so, then all happiness will be mine. Surely. Therefore, I have nothing to fear. I have nothing to lose. I don't have to hold on to anything. I can just give up all my independence and more make Krishna consciousness the priority. The demand is high. It is that everything else is secondary. It is not important. The material things that we need in this world, we should minimize them, right? Or only accept that which is useful in service. That's all right. But otherwise, as little as we can get by with is recommended. Not that it is recommended that we expand and expand and expand our material facility. Not a little bit. Yes, okay, we can have. I mean, I see here a whole array of phones and recorders, and I know that there are some fancy ones in people's pockets, and so on. We can have, but all these things absorb our consciousness. That we have to understand. They absorb our consciousness. Because if we use in the service of Krishna, then it's all right. So one must be careful, because our focus is Krishna. Abhideya means the process of purification, or the means by which we attain the goal. So for the Madhyam Adhikari, the intermediate devotee, his focus, his sambandha is there. He has fixed himself in the process. Therefore, Nistha, being fixed on making spiritual advancement, is his focus. And therefore, he is very serious about the process and really investing in it and trying to get into quality chanting, quality hearing, strict about following the rules, careful about what they eat, right? Preferably that it is cooked by devotees, careful about the ingredients, the E-numbers, and God knows all the other horrible things. Even Fisherman's Friends, by the way, which has now become for the Kirtaniers a big thing. There are two types of Fisherman's Friends, the one with sugar and the one with sorbitol. The one with sorbitol has magnesium stearate. Just Google magnesium stearate and see what it says. It says that many times magnesium stearate is from non-vegetarian sources. Therefore, just look on your package if it is what it has on it, and then you can decide whether you throw it in the bin or not. What does it say? Oh dear, sorbitol. Huh?
Yeah, that's not Vodafone.
Sorry, to spoil the fun. But, you know, When I first came to Australia, then I was welcomed in the Melbourne Temple, and in those days Atmaram was the Sankirtan leader, and you can imagine, you know, what it was like. And I was a guest, and I had to pay back a ticket because they had paid my ticket, and they told me I had to pay it back, and they sent me with paintings. So, you know, since I was a guest, you can be sure they gave me the best area to go and collect in. So they put me in a van, they drove me off to this factory area, and then they threw me out, and I walked there with the paintings. And I said, okay, first time in my life, I came straight from Vrindavan, got a roll of paintings, and I'm supposed to sell paintings. Well, the things you get into in Krishna consciousness, you just have to surrender. Yeah? So I was walking there with my paintings. Well, I guess I just have to surrender now and see this transcendental. The devotees want me to do this and pay back my debt. All right, here I go. I walked in the street and I saw a sign and it said blood and bones, $20. And I just arrived from Vrindavan, where I'd lived for many, many years. And I was just walking in the street and just thinking like, blood and bones, what is that sign? Whose blood? Whose bones? Well, it still didn't dawn upon me where I was. But when I went into the first factory, it turned out to be a place where they were slaughtering chickens. And there was a man who had chickens in a box, many, and there was a conveyor belt, and he was just chopping heads and then put the body on the conveyor belt, one after another. And I held up my paintings to him, and he bought $400 worth of paintings. And when he gave me the money, there was blood on the money, and I wasn't quite sure whether to take this money or not. But anyway, I took it. And then when I came out, there was a chicken on the wrong side of the fence trying to get inside. I told him, run, chicken, run. Just didn't get it, you know. Oh dear, oh dear. Anyway, I was in Leverton, which is part of Melbourne, a smelly part of Melbourne, and I did all the factories, and I also came to the Hortico, which is a well-known Australian company, and they had these big kettles, right, steaming. And when there were big bins, and when I looked in the bins, they were full of heads and legs and tails and all kinds of other parts that are not used. And they boil them into substances and so on, and from that they make certain things that go in your food package. For example, they take the cream out of the yogurt and sell it separately, but then the yogurt has become too thin. So then they add some of that stuff to make it a little thicker and call it thickener. It's nice, you can read it on the label, thickener. So, very tasty. It's also in toothpaste. I mean, if you would, I don't know, would you, if somebody boils down bones, would you, as a vegetarian, dip your toothbrush in the bones and then nicely brush your teeth with it? Well, most toothpaste is just that, yeah? Okay. But it gives a good smile. And keeps the bad breath from coming out, Agasura. So personally, I'm thinking that a Madhyam Adhikari gets strict about things. It's just like horrible, I don't want to have anything to do with that. No way. A Madhyam Adhikari doesn't say, oh, well, you know, I mean, you can't be fanatic, mate, you know, I mean, get off it, you know, come on, you know, don't be a square, you know. No, all that doesn't fly in the Madhyam Adhikari stage, because the Madhyam Adhikari wants to go back to Godhead this very lifetime. A Madhyam Adhikari knows that after many, many lifetimes I have achieved this human form of life, I can't waste it. So there, strictness comes in, but not fanaticism. Fanaticism belongs more with the Kanistha Adhikari, who is trying to act that he is also advanced. and therefore he is more strict than the strict. You know what I mean? So he will be inclined to take rules and use the rules to establish that he's more advanced than others. Yes? And therefore he uses the rules, you know, it's like, yeah, you know, you're not following these rules. You know? Yes, you know? This is, so that's very common in spiritual institutions, that some people are trying to establish their superiority over others by showing how knowledgeable they are, how much they're following rules and standards. And it's an austerity to live in such an atmosphere. And it's not something we want in our community, actually. It's a thorn in the side of the Vaishnavas. Because what we really want is appreciative relationships, and not someone who's, you know, when I first came into the temple, all day long, they would tell me that whatever I was doing was offensive. Prabhuji, yes, this is offensive. No, you cannot touch your nose, it's offensive. You cannot touch your mouth, it's offensive. You cannot hold your knees, it's offensive. Everything was offensive, my God. At one point, I was asleep at night after a whole day in a sleeping bag, simply on the floor, because that was all they gave us. And somebody woke me up, right? And I immediately said, I know, I'm offensive. I mean, it's come to that point. And, by the way, I was. Because I was a brahmachari, and I was sleeping on my belly, which is forbidden for brahmacharis. Right? You know, not allowed brahmacharis sleep on their side, only on the left side, preferably. Other sides are not recommended. Belly is strictly forbidden, absolutely forbidden. You know, if we catch you, you'll be shot. And so on. So they woke me up for that. Don't sleep on your belly. I said, but I was sleeping. That's ignorance is no excuse. Oh my God, you know. It was on the rigid side, so to speak, right? Extreme. So, if we, of course, we want some standards in a community, but it is very important that we learn how to impose such standards. Now, interesting is that this did not only come for the first time when Krishna consciousness came to the West. Actually, India has suffered for thousands of years of this niyamagraha, or overly attached to rules and regulations, namely the smarta brahmanas, who were like claiming Brahminical status by birthright. They have terrorized India, right? They have terrorized India for thousands of years, right? By imposing more and more rigidity upon the people. Right? And it is like everyone in India feels always guilty about everything, even when they're not guilty. Still, they feel guilty. You know, I'm making some offense. You know, I am doing it. I know. Please, you know. So the element of guilt in spiritual life is a big thing. Guilt, you know. Oh, you know, are you not a pure devotee yet? Oh, and you're still sitting like that, although it's... you have no shame. No. Can't hold your knees at all. No shame. Now you must feel guilty for the rest of the day. Embarrassed, and everyone will look at you and know, you know, how fallen you are. It's just, so like this spiritual life can in so many ways bring guilt within us. Actually, that is not it is not our process to dwell on guilt all the time, to feel guilty, always feel guilty. No. Guilt is something like the pain of the mind. Yeah? The body has pain sometimes, you know, like when you get pain in your foot, you have a look, is it still on there? Yeah? It didn't fall off yet. Good, right? So it's good to have some pain for that as a little warning, maybe now stop walking on it. Right? So pain is a mechanism of the body to warn this particular part of the body needs attention and care now. But if you have some pain, let's say the finger, and you go all the time, oh my finger, 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 oh fing, 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 grr, 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 oh finger, 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 oh my finger, my finger, my finger, my finger, my finger, my finger. In the end, you have a finger, you know, which is as big as a house. It gets bigger and bigger. It's, of course, if you have a painful finger, it does come into the mind again, but it's better to try and not dwell on it and engage the mind, distract the mind, keep the mind busy with other things. Then it is less of a misery. So, in the same way, feelings of guilt means that maybe there is something wrong that we're doing, and maybe we need to correct it, right? Although we are incurable, but maybe we really need to correct it. Not a lot. No holding of feet and knees. No. It's me. Nature devotion. I'm really picking on him now. I'm sorry for that. And you know what it says in the nature devotion? It says you can't wear red in front of the seat. It's all right, you know. Don't worry about it. No blue either, so you know, there's lots of blue guys in the audience, so you're not alone. It's just difficult. But so guilt, I was speaking about, is a warning signal to ourselves that we may have to stop doing certain things and make some adjustments. But that's what we have to do. Like the other day, we were discussing about repentance and how I was talking about Ignatius de Loyola, from the founder of the Jesuits, and that he had established a book called Spiritual Exercises. And if you, in that book, if you had a sinful thought, you had to immediately become you had to repent, right? You had to repent. And you had to immediately feel very bad that you had such a sinful thought, and then try to never think like that again. And if you would think like that again, then you'd even repent even more. God, I say, I was thinking like that twice. You know, I'm such a sinner, I'm such a sinner, I'm such a sinner. So, like, that's not our process, right? To go in that kind of consciousness. Prabhupada said, repentance means that you don't do it again. That's repentance. Repentance simply means don't do it again. So Prabhupada is very practical. So if we make adjustments, You say, well, yeah, but old habits die hard, and it doesn't always work to never do it again. You know, sometimes it just emerges. All right, can happen, but anyway, we keep on trying. We keep on trying. But guilt is not our approach. So, Bhakti Yoga is very positive. It is very positive. I have here, in Nistha, spiritual life gets inspiring. In Nistha, in that stage, it is said it's no longer a struggle. Sometimes they say that the stage of the Kanistha Adhikari is like going, it's all uphill. Everything is a struggle. Spiritual life is tough. It's a battle. It's a constant battle. So imagine we have a community of all Kanistas and everyone's battling with himself. Then what do you think they're going to do with each other? They're going to battle with each other also. Naturally. If someone's battling with himself, he's also going to battle with others. Therefore, that's why I'm bringing up these levels of the Kanistha, and of course, then the topmost devotee, the Uttama Adhikari, who's absorbed in the activities of the spiritual world. So, the Uttama Adhikari is always living on the deepest level of the movement in his relationship with the Lord. He's constantly seeing the Lord's hand in everything. And therefore, when he takes to the perfect process of bhakti, he is doing that with deep inspiration. And therefore he is lending inspiration to the process. And in this way, he is adding new life to the spiritual, to the organization, to the organizational level. The Madhyam Adhikari is deeply fixed in the perfect process and is really serious in his sadhana and sometimes gets glimpses of divine intervention. And the neophyte is mostly on the surface. Krishna looks far away and sometimes dips into the perfect process. You see how these things make sense and how, well, you can sort of see where we are. I put here the 26 qualities of a devotee. You are probably familiar with them, right? You've heard it before, that a devotee has 26 qualities. This is obviously an advanced devotee. An advanced devotee has these qualities. An advanced devotee is merciful. A devotee is not defiant, truthful, equal to everyone, faultless, magnanimous, mild, clean, without material possessions. A devotee performs welfare work for everyone. A devotee is peaceful. A devotee is surrendered to Krishna. A devotee is desireless. A devotee is indifferent to material acquisitions. A devotee is fixed. A devotee completely controls the 6 bad qualities. Remember we put them on the board yesterday? Lust, greed, anger, madness, illusion, and envy. A devotee eats only as much as required. A devotee is without inebriation. A devotee is respectful. A devotee is without false prestige. A devotee is grave. A devotee is compassionate. A devotee is a friend. A devotee is a poet. A devotee is expert. So, for the Kanistha, it is difficult to develop these qualities because the Kanistha is struggling with these 6 enemies: lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and so on, and with material attachment, and is battling and is trying to fix himself in the process. Therefore, these qualities will not be so much manifest. But the Madhyam may not have all the qualities, but at least the Madhyam can begin his meditation on these qualities. And this is what we need. Prabhupada said everyone should at least be a Madhyam Adhikari. And if as a community we are like that, right? If as a community we have made a serious commitment to the process and we sort of then we can, as a community, expect that these qualities begin to manifest in people, and then they begin to manifest in relationships, and suddenly we get a very nice community of devotees. No backbiting, and you know, and not all kinds of things under the surface. And therefore, within the community of Vaishnavas begins to really work on the Madhyam Adhikari platform. And that's where we see that these qualities become manifest. And then a story to end the lecture. One time, well, Madhavendra Puri was such a devotee. He was the first one who ever showed the extraordinary symptoms of love of God, which later were shown by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was the Param Guru of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or his disciple Iswara Puri became the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is said that Madhavendra Puri was going around this world, and wherever he went, he was an ocean of mercy, and he was Sparsamani. Whoever he met, he was transforming. You could not meet Madhavendra Puri and not feel changed. Any meeting with Madhavendra Puri had a permanent effect in life. It was just not like something one would forget. It was something one would remember, and it would gradually have an influence in people's lives. Some people became completely changed and became great devotees. Such a person was Madhavendra Puri. But Madhavendra Puri, all throughout his life, never met anyone like himself. He met many great devotees who were very dedicated, but he never met anyone who was so deeply absorbed in ecstatic love of God as he was himself. But one day, Madhavendra Puri met Lord Nityananda. And when those two met each other for the first time, they saw someone who had equal love as they had. And the ecstasy that just burst out of their heart was something so extraordinary. They embraced each other, but in the embrace they got so ecstatic that they fell on the ground together and started rolling on the ground and kicking. And meanwhile, Madhavendra Puri's disciples were there watching the whole thing. And it just was such amazing ecstasy when those two met. So speaking about relationships, now we're looking at Uttama Adhikari relationships, where Vaishnavas are very, very happy to meet one another, and where it is just the most inspiring experience. So, like that, we have to actually come to the point of really having amazing relationships with each other. Amazing relationships. And as a community, that will be our strength. Yesterday, when we were doing our little mind map, I remember that someone said, because of my friends, I come back. Right? And I said, or I stay. Right? In my case, I stay. It's a fact, and I'm with that. I forgot who said it, but I'm somewhere in that side of the room, and I'm with that person because, you know, these days I'm looking for friendship in Krishna consciousness. Right? There was a time when I was part of. Was thinking, okay, I'm part of a society now, and let's try and do something and for the interest of the society. And I'm still doing that, right? Let's try and do something, make ISKCON stronger, let's do something to spread Krishna consciousness to the world. But I want to be with people who are my friends. I want to be with devotees who are my friends. I don't want to work with devotees who are not, well, who have such a different vision. In the past, I've worked with devotees whenever I thought, well, when I thought, yes, this is it, they would go, no, forget it, no. And whenever they would say, this is it, I would think, oh no, let's forget it. We have to share some vision. I want to be with people who share the vision, who who say, yes, let's together work on the same goal. So that friendship is very important. And we see, it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sanatana Goswami, he first met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Varanasi, and there he became purified. And then later he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all his devotees in Jagannath Puri. When he met those devotees, they gave him respect, they gave him mercy. They could, because they got a lot of mercy, so they could give him mercy. And they gave him friendship. Respect, mercy, and friendship. So if only we could have relationships based on respect, mercy, and friendship, then we would have such an inspiring community, we would never want to leave, right? We'd never want to leave. But if we are a movement where we are all the time telling everyone, you're offensive, or you're this, then after a while you think like, or a movement, where people are so much in the grip of the 6 enemies, and there is anger or lust. This one walks off with that one's wife, you know what I mean? Or stuff like that. Then you just, I mean, I know a story of a devotee who joined the temple. He became a Sankirtan devotee, distributing books and distributing many books and collecting a lot of for the temple. And then his mother was still young, and he had a younger sister. Sister 16 years old, and the mother was only 34, and the boy was 18. And then the temple president had an affair with his mother and his sister. After that, he left Krishna consciousness. Understandable. So such things are unfortunate that we understand. So therefore, we can see how much these 6 enemies are not only our personal enemies, but they're also the enemy of our community. And we have to try and rise above. And okay, those who are weak, we can be kind and merciful to them. But okay, maybe they need, depending on their level, they need to either stay in a private situation or so on. We have to keep. If someone is too weak, then they should be in a private situation. They can still relate to the devotees. But devotees who are stronger, they should seek each other's company. If you come to the temple once a week, poor, spiritually poor. It's a poor lifestyle. You are a poor man. You don't have much Daivi Sampat. You don't get much spiritual wealth. Only once a week. I mean, is that all? Poor. No, we must seek out devotees all the time. We must be eager to be with devotees. Even if it's at a distance, somehow or other. We must be there all the time, as much as possible. That is eagerness. Eagerness is nistha. Eagerness is determination. One back is nistha. You see my point? I without pointing the finger at anyone. Sorry, man. It wasn't finger. 4 fingers. Without pointing the finger at anyone, or without singling anyone out in particular, and without casting blame for where we are not. I hope that with these few slides, I have created a frame from where we see what we can do to improve the conditions in our community, and how we can see that faith, the depth of our faith, directly reflects in the relationships that we have within our community, and also in how we perceive our movement. Can you go one back? Remember, in the 3 layers. It's very important that we see the 3 layers. A lot of people are not aware that there are 3 layers. They see only the top. And they see the ups and downs of the organization. They have no idea. They never thought of this, that the movement is a station. Just a station where you board the train. They never thought of it like that. So I hope that with these few diagrams, I've expanded some vision in all of you. Now, if there's a few responses, then some questions or some comments, that would be nice. Just a little discussion.
You're sitting right up, isn't it?
In regards to the external organisation, sometimes devotees describe ISKCON as like a hospital, and that we're all patients. But sometimes the problem comes where those patients look at the other patients and they play doctor to the other patients. I was wondering if you could discuss that.
Well, the analogy of a hospital came originally from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Prabhupada also took it. And Prabhupada said that yes, we are in the hospital, we're all patients in the hospital, but at the same time we're also looking after each other. Yeah? So we have to look after ourselves and grow, and at the same time we have to look after others. But we should not put ourselves on a platform that I have all the chips. Right? We should, when we are on a platform, like I'm definitely on a platform here, I'm sitting on a golden sofa, which is, you know, it's not too bad, eh? Right? In the final session of the seminar, it's going to levitate as well. So it's going to be, that's how I'll exit, you know. It's like I just go up and then fly out of the door. So that's the plan. It was all staged, so it is a bit of a platform, but that is given by the Vaishnavas. When the Vaishnavas give us a platform, alright, then we can accept it for the sake of the benefit of the community, but not that we put ourselves on the platform. We have to wait till the Vaishnavas put us on the platform and bless us there. And when one is on the platform, one has to just understand that, like, well, I'm not very qualified. I have to be very careful. Just before this seminar, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was leading the kirtan, and I was just about to sit down to give the talk, and then my spiritual master was sitting there in my place. And it was like, oh, you know, I was supposed to give the talk. And oh, he's giving the talk. And of course, externally I was, okay, yes, very nice. Internally I felt like, you know, what about me? I was scheduled to give the talk. Set my mind. And then I woke up, and I was thinking, yeah, what to do with this dream. I didn't know. But now that I'm sitting on the sofa, I think that now I know what the dream is all about. Because my spiritual master is very learned, extremely learned, much more than me in scripture. Extremely learned, because he was and still is the editor of Prabhupada's books. So he spent all his time editing these books, and editors have to go very deep into the books, really deep into the books. So extremely learned. But he always says that whenever he speaks, I'm just trying to say something authorized. Okay? And that is an important point. So I think sitting here on the golden sofa, I have to be careful that I'm saying something authorized, that I'm repeating scripture, that I'm repeating the acharyas, or I may present it in an original way with original examples, but the substance has to be there. So as one gets a position, one also gets more responsibility. If you want to be a doctor, you have to know something about medicine, and you have to be recognized by other doctors. Otherwise, you're a quack. So it is. Positions of spiritual leadership are difficult, and even when we are authorized by the Vaishnavas, it doesn't mean that we are protected. Still, there's ample of opportunity for a false ego to interfere, and we have to again and again take a humble platform and not act so much that I know exactly. I know everything about everything. No, you always remember there's a lot to learn. In that way, we can. I may have an idea, and it's my perception, my opinion, but there may be other ideas, and I should hear them and give them due consideration. I should be open to that. So one has to cultivate this kind of open-minded, humble attitude. Not easy. It takes a lot of cultivation. But that's part of our culture. That is the cultivation we do. Cultivation of humility. Lord Chaitanya said, just like a tree which has many fruits, its branches automatically bow down. In the same way, a person who's very qualified automatically takes a humble platform. One is not so qualified. I am the authority. Any other questions? Yes, please.
You spoke about the rigidity of the rules. So where does that boundary end?
Yes.
Following rules and becoming rigid?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's also the liberal side, right? I also mentioned it. Right? The liberal side is like, I mean, come on, man, don't be a square, you can't be, don't worry. When I put on accents, don't take it personal, please. Right? I mean, it's just. I can't help myself. I speak many languages, many, yeah? And therefore I tend to slip into them, It's just, it's just to add the dramatic thing. And the Australian accent lends itself very well for the no worries mood, Therefore, I just slip into the Aussie accent and I go like, well, come on, don't be phonetic. If I would say that with an Indian accent, don't be phonetic. It wouldn't have the same ring to it, Even French accent, don't be phonetic. It doesn't have it, If you want to say don't be fanatic, the Aussie accent is the best. Get off her back. Definitely. It fits the part, that's all, But there are very but the fact of the matter is there are very fanatic Australian devotees as well. I don't know if that was praise or not. I mean to say that we have all varieties everywhere. We have Indian devotees who are very strict, Indian devotees who are very slack, Australian devotees who are very strict or very slack. But we have to be, not fanatic, but we have to be strict, because this is a rare opportunity. So we don't want all the time people pointing out to others what they have to do. We have to, but we want an atmosphere in our community where we embrace ourselves, for ourselves, standard of strictness. So with ourselves we must be strict, not so much with others, but with ourselves. And then you automatically get, if there is a group of people that are strict for themselves, then that automatically creates a mood of strictness. And that sets the standard. And then you don't need to all the time wave your finger. See, and that is more where I'm coming from. That strictness must be there is important, obvious. Because we're playing with something very serious. We're playing with the opportunity that we get to go back to God at this lifetime. So you can't be loose with that and miss the boat. No. So strictness is needed. But when this strictness is constantly imposed upon others, it becomes like suffocating. Then our whole community is like, and that is why the youth of India, for example, is now turning away from the culture, because it's suffocating. And they've seen MTV and they see how the rest of the world lives, and they say, we want that also. We're tired of the endless rules and the endless regulations. We just want to be free. But in our movement then, we come back with so many rules. So we have to, on the basis of knowledge and understanding, embrace strictness ourselves. That's how it is. Is that all right? Anyone else? I'll let you go for breakfast, don't worry.
Well, sometimes we see organizations, funds are not used properly.
Sometimes you see an organization and then you cannot hear.
Funds are not used.
Funds are not used properly. Church. Yes. Isotope. Yes. What, you want me to comment on that? Well, again, there are two sides, you know. One is that there must be proper accounting. That has to be there. Wherever there's money, there must be clear, transparent accounts, good system of accounts must be there. Also, the money that is spent in such a spiritual institution is public fund. It's public money, it's not private money. So whoever is spending on behalf of the institution is spending public money and cannot just act as if he's spending his own. He has to think of that he is sensitive to the public. But there are also different standards. So let's say when the accounting is in place, when the transparency is in place, yeah, well, you know, then there's also an element that I will say, let's spend it on this, and you say, no, this is misspending. And you bring 4 friends, and they will also say, and all 4 of you together say it's misspending. But that doesn't necessarily make it misspending. Yeah. So we must also when the proper systems of accounts, etc. are in place, give the management some room to do something. You know, if you have, when you're driving and there's 3 other people in the car also driving, it gets really too much, isn't it? The backseat drivers. So you should not all become backseat drivers. You're spending the money. Because you see, I lived in India a long time. In fact, almost half my life. So therefore, I'm half Indian. Yes. So therefore I can speak about both sides, yes, without offending anyone because I'm insider. Yes. So the Indians, they are sometimes, well, the word is used, cheapskates, you know. Everything must be spent as little as possible. Yes. Spend nothing. Yes. Don't spend anything and just go for the cheapest and the quality and that. In the West, sometimes everything in the West is best, right? They also think in India, West is best. Well, one reason why West is best is because they spend money. They spend money for quality. Yeah, that is also there. So we are, both is there. So sometimes we have to spend, sometimes we have to save. And a balance should be there. It's not that one person should have all the authority over all the money and just spend everything. But at the other hand, we should not constantly try to manage the managers, because then nobody wants to manage anymore. As the backseat drivers. At one point you say, okay, you drive, then you drive. So again, such things can easily be resolved when there are good relationships. I'm speaking about community. When the relationships are proper, when there is trust, and when someone is trustworthy, then it is all going to work. Then we say, oh yes, all right, let him do it, let him decide. But when there's no trust, and when there's not a culture of trustworthiness, then we look at each other with suspicion. And if we get, in the community, we get a lot of suspicion, then we start to police each other. And all the time, and then today we are friends, and then tomorrow we found something, and then suddenly he's become a criminal. See, we play police and criminal. So we've had that a lot in our community of Vaishnavas, this police and criminal dynamics. Where there's a group of Vaishnavas policing each other, and then when someone takes one step over the line, aha, we caught him, and it's like, so that also doesn't help a positive atmosphere for being happy together and inspired. So you must be very careful. You know, I've been in management for many years, and now, fortunately, not anymore. But it was my service to correct many people and situations and so on. And I was sometimes too eager to correct the wrong situation and insensitive to maintaining the relationship. We should understand that the relationships with Vaishnavas are very careful, very, very important. So we should be very careful not to correct the thing at the expense of the relationship. For example, you have a president and you think he's not spending proper, and then you start to make noise, he's misspending. And you break the relationship. Not good. We should not do that. We should not, to correct things, break relationships. We should correct things, but maintain the relationship at the same time. Like Chanakya Pandit speaks like that also. Chanakya Pandit says, if you want to correct someone, you have to be the proper person to do it. You have to be someone's friend, otherwise he's not going to take it from you. You have to be at least his equal or a senior. And then if you want to speak to him, then you have to still do it in private. Because if you publicly embarrass someone, then they become angry with you. I'll touch his feet later. But you still can't hold your feet. You can't hold your knees. It's heavy, huh? Yeah. It's not really emotion. It's mental. So relationship comes in the picture, and that's very important. And money should be spent. Prabhupada said we should not keep money in the bank. We should spend. If we keep it in the bank, the government will take it. We should spend it, but we should spend it properly on proper assets for pushing on Krishna consciousness. We have a great need to spend. We can't, I mean, if someone is a good spender, that's what we want. We want people to spend. We don't want to save. No, we want to spend, but we want to spend it properly, so that Krishna consciousness is promoted. We need more temples. In West Sydney, we need a big one. It's time. I've heard about it. It's just now coming. It will. Yes, I hope in my lifetime.
We should pray today.
Praying is a good beginning, and then we should do something. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but no, not on anyone's, but like that. We want to spend. Anyone? Anyway, with all due respect. Alright, so we are now taking our break. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but someone has. When are we resuming? Oh, here it is. Schedule has manifest. It says breakfast at 9 a.m. That's right in time. At 10:30 a.m. there is a cultural program, and then at 11 a.m. We get to the final part of this seminar. Thank you very much, and see you again. And we're still on the old time, although the world has already moved along. We stayed behind, and we'll change time at the end of the seminar by popular vote. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.